Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you are in the world. My name's Nathan Gray and I'm delighted to be joined by Daniel Dunleavy, Head of Branded Ingredients at Prinova Europe, and we're going to be talking today about some of the trends driving the probiotic market, the little microscopic miracles. Thanks for joining us, Daniel.
Thank you, Nathan. Pleasure to be here.
So in this session, we're going to be talking about some of the drivers that have been increasing demand for probiotics. Let's start with some of the basics and just ask you really what are probiotics and why are they important for our health?
Great question, Nathan. Probiotic research is very important. When we look at the context of bacteria within our body, there's 3 billion base pairs of DNA in the human genome. Compare that to the amount of bacteria in our body, it's 37 trillion. Not all of these bacteria will have probiotic effects for sure, but the point is, through probiotic research, there's a great deal more we can learn and uncover about the health benefits of bacteria within our body. The WHO defines probiotics as living microorganisms which confer a health benefit to the host. To put this very simply, the person or animal with a healthy microflora and in adequate levels of probiotics will feel the health benefits. Traditionally, there's been lots of areas of research around probiotics in gut health, but actually that's changing and expanding now. As we begin to uncover more evidence and more scientific research, the possibilities of probiotics are becoming much more endless.
Sure, and we'll come to some of the research linking probiotics sort of well beyond the gut into all sorts of other very interesting areas in a little while. But before we do, I just want to dig into what are, let's be honest, some of the better known benefits of probiotics, and that is really related to their gut health and digestion. So let's dig into that a little bit and talk about what that means and where that comes from.
Sure. When you look at the incidence in Europe of people who report digestive or gastrointestinal issues, almost 20% of the population report some mild issues like indigestion, for instance, heartburn, right through to more complex issues such as IBS. The probiotic research has focused on a lot of the gut health benefits of probiotics and bacteria within our body. So probiotics will always have a place, and rightly so, in that industry. And we don't see that trend stopping or disappearing, because even as the science evolves and we uncover more probiotic strains and more mechanisms of actions of different probiotics, the area of gut health is obviously going to increase as well. Absolutely,
and one of that figure of 20% is huge, and really quite startling actually. And I'd guess that because of that, we see the probiotic market sort of being quite big in Europe, right? And people spending a lot of money in that area.
Yeah, well, a lot of those issues are sometimes related to the Western diets. There's no doubt about that. In the last number of years, almost 22% of product launches in the supplement area have had some claim for gut health function. So it's a big number, but let's take that in the global context. The exact same relative figures in Asia Pacific, for example, is a whopping 47%, over double what we see in Europe. When we drill down into those figures a little bit, the reason mainly we see such a high number in Asia Pacific is because fermented foods, bacteria-related products are a core staple of the diet in Asia Pacific. So the general average consumer is much more comfortable with the knowledge around the health benefits of bacteria.
That's such an interesting point and an important point, I think, because like you say, in Asia there is much more of a connection to things like fermented foods, and these foods, like kimchi, for example, I guess, do contain bacterial strains, right? So maybe we can just dig into that a little bit and talk about the differences between what a fermented food is and what, say, a specific probiotic strain is that you'd find in a supplement or a health food.
Yeah, and there is an important distinction, Nathan. Fermented foods for sure are good for us. They contain lots of different types of bacteria. There's a lot of research ongoing within areas of fermented foods to identify and isolate exactly what those types of bacteria are. However, when you compare that to something like supplements, for instance, what we generally find is isolated strains that are well researched in science, for instance, whereas in fermented foods, there's not always a standard dose of bacteria within certain foods, so maybe they're not always comparable.
Yeah, so in for example, a supplement, you're always going to get that validated strain with a dose that is the correct dose, whereas in a fermented food, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really important point to make, I guess. And, you know, when we're talking about probiotics within the industry, we are obviously always talking about these very well-defined, well-researched strains. It's great to clear these things up. So gut health is clearly an important area for probiotics. But one of the other things that we've seen a lot in recent years, and that you all alluded to earlier, is some of the benefits that are coming online now from new research, looking beyond digestion and that gut health, that general gut wellness area. So.
Yeah, exactly. And one good area to look at and to start with is cardiovascular disease. As you know, CVD is one of the leading causes of mortality worldwide, not just in developed countries, but also more increasing in developing countries as well. There are a number of modifiable risk factors associated with CVD. They include total cholesterol levels, high levels of LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, and lower levels of HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol. Some research shows that Lactobacillus reuteri has the ability, or may have the potential, to reduce total cholesterol levels by up to 11%, which is an outstanding figure in itself, while also lowering LDL cholesterol by 9%, which balances the ratio between HDL and LDL cholesterol. And that's the key target in CVD risk management. Further to that, Lactobacillus plantarum has also been shown in some studies to reduce total cholesterol numbers by up to 13%. So two significant reduction factors in potentially managing CVD.
Wow, those are some really impressive results there. And I know that obviously cardiovascular disease is one arm of research in the probiotic space, but we're seeing a whole new sort of world of research in that area, and the whole interlinked world of metabolism, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, obesity, and sort of all of that non-communicable diseases, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, obesity is an epidemic in the Western world. Many researchers have tried in the past to pin down obesity on one particular factor, but actually I think what's well since been proven now is that obesity is related to a number of factors. It's not just genetics, it's also complex interaction with lifestyle factors, diets, exercise, for instance, as well. So a really interesting area to research probiotics.
So what does the evidence show us for example, for probiotics and obesity?
Yeah, in one study actually, Lactobacillus gasseri supplementation in individuals who are obese was shown to help improve their body composition. The study was diet controlled, of course. The individuals took a supplement containing probiotic, and at the end of the research study, the figures showed that abdominal visceral fat and subcutaneous fat had dropped by 4.6 and 3.3% respectively. Other studies shows that Lactobacillus plantarum, when administered to individuals who already suffer from metabolic syndrome, for instance, had a nice reduction in their blood pressure and visceral fat levels, which are two important risk factors associated with metabolic syndrome.
Mm-hmm. It's incredible that really there is so much potential for helping with these sorts of conditions, isn't it? It's amazing, right?
Yeah, we're absolutely at the tip of the iceberg with some of this research.
It's crazy, right? And you know, one of the things that we haven't talked about is the whole area of allergy, for example, which is really taking off as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So probiotics have also been studied in loads of different areas: immune, cognitive function. There's research beginning to come out now into the public domain. But one important area is allergies. For instance, atopic dermatitis is a really big problem, particularly in young children. And in one study, researchers found that supplementation with Lactobacillus fermentum, for instance, given to young children, showed a marked decrease in the length and severity of the symptoms related to atopic dermatitis. The group who took probiotics, the symptoms had reduced to mild at the end of the study by 54% compared to just 30% in the controlled group.
That's incredible. Again, you know, there's so many different areas that we're seeing these different emerging benefits for different strains as well. We must sort of reiterate, you know, these are all very strain specific in terms of studies.
Absolutely. Probiotics, it is important to note, are strain and dose specific. So it's not a one size fits all approach to research.
Absolutely. Now, we've already talked about so many of the emerging benefits of probiotics, but I can't go without move on without asking you about an area that I really love, and that's and we've seen a lot of interest exploding, and that's sports nutrition. It's really just been an explosion of interest, both in the industry and research side lately.
100%. And sports, the nut is just about to crack. We're about to break open a whole world of area in sports performance research with probiotics. There's ongoing studies which show probiotics may help protein uptake in the body, for instance. But one of the most common uses of probiotics in sports performance is actually to reduce muscle fatigue after exercise. So probiotics are not just designed for people with existing health conditions. They can help already healthy individuals maximize their well-being. So in one study, Bacillus coagulans was found to reduce the length and severity of muscle soreness in high-performing athletes after exercise, which in itself is very important to athletes and sports performance.
Absolutely, especially at the top of your game, right? You know, those elite athletes.
Absolutely.
You know, having a quicker recovery and being able to get back on the training field or back to game ready is, you know, so important. Critical. Absolutely. And you know, it's amazing just how much potential there is out there for all of these different strains. I'd like to move on though and ask you a little bit more about how people are taking their probiotics and some of the challenges that the industry's been facing in terms of getting them into supplements and also into functional foods and drinks.
Yeah, and that's a really important question. There has been some negative press in the past around probiotic supplements. That has generally focused on two areas: the viability of probiotic cells in the product and also the shelf life. And traditionally speaking, that has hindered the applications for probiotics. So traditionally, probiotics have lended themselves really well to dairy products, which are chilled, cold store, and ideal for bacteria to survive. However, in more recent years, as the manufacturing processes improve, manufacturers have overcome these challenges. So nowadays, manufacturers have come up with really clever ways to microencapsulate probiotics, for instance. Freeze drying is another technique commonly used to help maintain the stability of probiotics through the finished product manufacturing process. And actually what we've seen brands in the marketplace do really, really well is communicate the added value of the probiotic strains, the stability of their strains that they use, and that's helped to rebuild consumer confidence. So consumers are still flocking to the stores to buy probiotic supplements, and this trend isn't going to go away, thankfully.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more, but also I guess one of the things that I've noticed, especially in the last few years, is people talking about the technical challenges, but also some of the new technologies coming on board to get probiotic strains into some of these more difficult functional food and drink formats, where historically it's been very difficult.
Yeah, again, great question, because it is an important point for formulators out there who want to include probiotics in their product concepts. When we look at the technical challenges in the past, we always used to see that it was stability through the manufacturing process of finished products. So that could be concerns around heat, moisture activity, for instance. And even then, when the consumer takes probiotics, they're tolerant to acid in the stomach. Okay? So through the clever techniques that manufacturers use, such as microencapsulation, that has improved the ability for finished product manufacturers to safely manufacture and deliver probiotics in traditional supplement products like capsules, for instance.
Yeah, it's really interesting, some of the new technologies that are coming on board and really helping that. And I guess because of that, you've started to see some, let's say, more interesting ideas and requests on that innovation pipeline. So, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but what are some of the more interesting, let's say, requests that you've seen in innovation projects that you've maybe had involving probiotics in the last few years?
Yeah, exactly. And so at Prinova, for instance, we work with brands on a regular basis to help develop products with probiotics, particularly those that require some technical challenges. There's a really nice probiotic chocolate on the market, for instance, at the minute. And actually the fat in the chocolate helps to protect the probiotics. That's a really interesting concept for two reasons. One, because it serves as an excellent confectionery retail product, because it's also low sugar, but actually from a food service perspective, it allows certain bakery manufacturers to add chocolate products as inclusions, like chocolate chips, for instance, to certain muffins, for instance, as a way of delivering probiotics in a new and innovative format. So that's a really interesting concept. We've also begun to work in the area of carbonated beverages with certain strains of probiotics that we have clever techniques that we can use essentially to ensure that the probiotics survive the production process. It's not just consumer-led innovation, though, it has to be said, Nathan. We've also seen a huge increase in probiotic manufacturers developing ways to safely deliver viable cells to raw material manufacturers. One way in which they do this is to use something like Treha, for instance, which is a trehalose product, which helps to maintain the viability of bacterial cells by original probiotic manufacturers.
Excellent. So, yeah, I mean, it's something, I guess, that people don't necessarily think about all the way through the supply chain, but, you know, there's been so much focus and talk, especially in the, let's say, the B2B media and at conferences and things about sort of the technologies into the final product, but I guess you need those sort of technologies all the way through the supply chain, right?
Absolutely, it's critical, but all these things through the supply chain, all these little innovations, this is really what's helping to drive demand for probiotics.
Absolutely. And one of the other trends that I'd really like to pick your brain about a little bit is sort of, we're hearing a lot about premiumization within the probiotic market in particular, and in the whole microbiome space, I guess. So how have you seen this trend develop, and what's the demand like that you've seen for more premium products in the probiotic space? Yeah,
really interesting actually, because although I alluded to earlier that the product launches in the EU market were a little bit behind Asia Pacific, for example, that doesn't stop consumers demanding premium additions to probiotic products. Consumers are becoming much more educated on probiotics. They understand much more clearly the benefits of a healthy microbiome to their overall wellness. So when we talk about probiotics now, we don't just talk about probiotics on their own. We also talk about different solutions which include prebiotic functions. So for instance, we offer a product called Aquamin, which is a natural plant-based derived calcium, which also has scientific research to suggest it supports prebiotic function. A huge area of interest currently is postbiotic, which is relatively new. Postbiotics are short-chain fatty acids. Prinova offer a revolutionary product called Core Biome, which is based on tributrin, which is a short-chain fatty acid, and again has research to show postbiotic function. So it's not just probiotics. Consumers are much more aware that they need to have a holistic or all-in-one approach to helping probiotics proliferate to benefit their overall wellness.
Absolutely, and this is one of the things that certainly I've seen a lot about in the market as well, is sort of taking it from just a probiotic approach, or even a symbiotic approach, which is sort of where a lot of the market is at the minute, but to a more holistic whole microbiome approach almost, right?
Exactly.
And so, how are you at Prinova and in your day-to-day job sort of helping to move that forward, and what can people working with yourself and with Prinova expect when they approach you?
Yeah, so Prinova are proud to be innovation leaders in the area of gut health. What we help customers do is solve complex technical challenges in their product development. We do that by offering many different solutions, whether it's premixes, whether it's blends for different applications, whether it's literally consultancy advice on how best they can use the strains that we sell, for instance. We see this as a real added value and added advantage in the market, and we're excited about the future of probiotics.
Me too, and it really does sound like you guys have completely got it covered then, right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for today, though. I really do want to just say a big thank you to Daniel for joining us and for sharing his wealth of both scientific and technical expertise with us. I hope you've enjoyed our chat, and if you have, then please do get in touch with Prinova, visit their website, check out the technical documentation attached to this presentation, and thank you again for watching.